Yes.
Mull. All right. She's the owner of Placer Realty Advisors. We're going to talk all things real estate today when the show starts and the camera goes on. Keith, my friend, you've assembled yet another fantastic panel.
I got to tell you, I was reading through your bio and I put the tie on. I'm just telling you, I put the tie on.
I put my jacket on.
Professor, I mean, you got a master's degree from VCU for real estate evaluation. You got a master's degree from ODU on business administration. You're a facility, you're a professor, right, at VCU, adjunct professor, and you've done all kinds of talking in front of NAR and all these kind of fun stuff, and so I put the tie on, right, because today was an official day. Okay, I put it on
Friday.
Woody and I kept it casual, though.
Yeah,
that's how we like to roll.
I got a board.
I got to go measure a house after this. So.
I know, right. It's Friday, exactly.
I just happen to have a board meeting, that's why.
We're going to have a lot of fun, guys, on the Friday edition of Real Talk. Judah Wickower, the show can start here in a matter of moments. Let me highlight some of the folks that are watching the program before we start the program. Jesse Rutherford, Nelson County Board of Supervisors. Hello, my friend. Bellamy Brown. David Puso, hello. Holly Foster and Henrico, hello. Albert Graves, hello. Chef Fonner, hello. Mayor Snook, hello. Dean Russell, I think you're going to love this show. One of Ross Mortgage's finest. Kevin Yancey, hello, in Waynesboro. Thank you for watching. John Ray, hello. We appreciate when you watch the program. Brittany Gray of Stanley Martin, hello. Rob Hubbard, the Esquire. Chad Wood, hello. Georgia Gilmer. Eric Gunderson, the real estate investor. Bashir, the restaurateur. Angela Morbely of Inspired Homes, the real estate developer and home visionary, if you may. J-Dubs, we can rock and roll, my friend, when you're ready. Good Friday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and this is Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us here on the I Love Seville Network, a show that airs and is archived on every social media platform known to mankind. Today's program, I think, is going to be absolutely dynamite. Woody Fincham is in the house, and anytime Woody is on set, we have fantastic content. I sincerely mean this. He always makes us think. We also have the fabulous Heather Mull in the house. She's the owner of Placer Realty Advisors. We'll get to know her in a matter of moments. Keith Smith in the house on a Friday, and of course Judah Wickower keeping us on air and looking sharp. Jerome Powell at Jackson Hole now, literally with a press conference, and he's insinuating some more tightening on the horizon. I'm sure that topic will come up today on the show. Judah, why don't we go to the studio camera and then the four-shot and welcome Keith, Heather, and Woody.
So Heather, thank you for being here. We've been trying to put this together for a while. I've been excited about trying to add a little bit of commercial conversation into our real estate little show that we've been doing for almost 550 shows now, Jerry and I. And Woody, it's always a pleasure to have you here. It was good to see you last night. I needed to bail to go visit the grandkids, but
always a pleasure to be here, Keith.
It was a good turnout. So Heather, I did a quick intro. I mean, you've got a couple of master's degree. You're a professor at VCU, but tell the folks about yourself a little bit, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going into, actually 2023 makes my 30th year in the appraisal business. So I like to say, apparently this is what I'm doing when I grow up. So yeah, I do all commercial. I started out in residential, did residential and commercial both for a while, but it's been, over 15 years since then. So I laid the residential over to Woody. I just concentrate on the commercial, and also CCIMs. I do a little bit of sales also, but my main focus is on commercial appraisal and do a lot of just about every property type out there.
So you focus mostly in Richmond or state of Virginia?
Richmond and Virginia, pretty much everywhere in the state except for maybe far southwest. I don't go down towards Bristol very much, but other than that, pretty much all over Virginia.
Well, I'm going to chime in what Jerry said about what Mr. Powell's talking about here in a minute, but would you give us a quick intro, brother?
Well, I've been here a lot. I think most people watching know me, but our company is Fincham & Associates. We do residential, specialize in complex, equestrian estates, hobby farms. Do a little bit of commercial work with Heather. She's helping me along with getting my my credentials to be a commercial appraiser at some point. But I was going to say, Heather, 30 years. You started when you were like 11?
5.
Did you say 5?
5.
Oh, yeah. Good for you. Good for you. So, look, Jerry kicked it off. I mean, the news is the news. The likelihood of short-term interest rates going up, I think, is pretty high. Talk about that impact on your world and impact on the commercial market, because most commercial money is tied to prime. So let's just talk about that a little bit.
It is, and it's interesting. Obviously, been watching this, and I'm watching. As soon as you heard, I heard Powell as we were starting, and interest rates. I perked up and just started staring at the news. But yeah, generally once we see the rates go up, cap rates are going to start to go up, and we're starting to feel that. It's coming. It's already started. Some. It's just in our world, we're tied to any time that Powell speaks, anytime there's an interest rate, because, unfortunately, when cap rates start going up, values start coming down.
So
And
cap rates are capitalization rates?
Correct. And that's your relationship of the rent to the overall, or your NOI to the overall value. And, those cap rates start, unfortunately, it's inverse. Higher cap rates, the lower the value. So we're starting. It hasn't overall, and of course there's pockets. So we haven't seen a huge impact here in Virginia in most areas yet. And I know some people will say, well, I know in my area, but and a lot of that's because the rents are still continuing to go up. So there's a little bit insulation, and we also had such higher rental rates over what the borrowing costs were for so long that there's still a good gap there where it's still profitable. But we're all kind of, at some point it's going to hit that break even point where they're even, and that's when we're wondering when that's going to come.
So I'm a recovering developer and builder, and I borrowed my money. So when this thing started going like that is when I got a little bit nervous.
What class of real estate has the most exposure or vulnerability right now? What do you think?
Right now in commercial, office is where the most heartburn is.
Yeah.
Class
Office,
A.
Class A.
Class A, yeah.
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 And put that in perspective. Why? Because of
just-
the hybrid movement.
It is. It is. It's. I think to a certain extent, and we all know that when we start hearing this in the media, sometimes that causes investors to start to, office is going to go lower in value, so people are starting, and vacancy is going to start to go up, so people start to pull away from that. But the hybrid obviously was a big thing. It was interesting during COVID because the immediate knee reaction was office is just going to be horrible because everybody's working from home, and then we started to feel, well, people are getting tired of being trapped with their spouses and their kids, love them, but they want to get back to the office. So it kind of swung the other way where no, office is going to be okay, and now it's starting to constrict just a little bit more with, well, I think people are only going to be in 2 days a week, so now companies are saying, do we really need this big of a floor plan?
Well, we've had a local, Jerry can chime in on this, we just had a local commercial parcel just do that. It's a pretty, CFA Institute just was sold, and majority of the reason is the hybrid going back then, and now they're kind of diversifying the footprint and diversifying the who's in it, who's the leasable space. We kind of talked about this a little bit, and we'll get Woody to chime in here from this.
Heather's got some fans giving her some props right now.
All right, go ahead.
I'm not watching.
I'll drink coffee.
Maggie Gunnell says, Heather is a major leader in the commercial space. She says you're an absolute rock star. She says hi to Keith and Woody as well. So good to see you two last night. And she says Heather is a rock star, super, super smart.
Oh, thank
So
you.
Maggie Gunnell's watching the
I
program.
actually met Maggie in person for the first time. We've worked together for years.
Last night?
Yeah, last night, and she lives almost literally across the street from me.
Get out.
I had no clue.
Small world, Lake Monticello.
I got a hug out of her yesterday, so that was good.
We're fans, Maggie Gunnels as well here on set. Let's get Woody Fincham in the mix here. Anywhere you want to go on what we've covered so far with Class A having some vulnerability. PAL clearly is tightening. You mentioned off air, you would not be surprised if we surpass a 9% number with the 30-year fixed mortgage rates here soon, which is a pretty stiff number there.
It is, but I think it's inevitable that we're heading in that direction. They've given no sign to us otherwise. I mean, every time the Fed gets together, they're talking about, we're not slowing enough. I'm almost thinking, real estate really is the largest GDP in the country. And I'm really thinking that as long as we have a shortage of inventory and the market's starting to climb, is continuing to climb the way that it has in value, we may actually see the Fed wanting to actually stymie that down a bit, unfortunately. And I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, everybody's looking in their crystal ball now. No one really has an answer for what's going on.
It's so interesting, and I want to throw this out here. As rates have risen, it's throttled residential inventory. Those of us that have 2.75 mortgages, why are we going to list now? When we're flirting with 9%, over 8% in some circumstances here. So it's created value for existing, but it's diminishing value for commercial. I want to unpack that right there. Heather, you're getting props from Gail Peace, who's watching in South Hill, Virginia,
yes.
Midlothian, Virginia.
I know.
So the show is yours on that topic. Anywhere you want to go.
That was a lot in there. The difference obviously between commercial and residential that Woody does is so much of what I do is tied to rents. So as long as those rents are still continuing to climb, there's still obviously still value in commercial. What happens though is when we start seeing higher vacancy rates, and higher vacancy, as we know from Econ 1, higher vacancy, there's more availability, more supply, so those rates are going to start to, landlords are going to have to be more competitive, so those rents are starting to go down, and that's when you're really seeing it. We talked about office. Obviously, there's still some pockets, I don't want to say pockets, but property types that are still really good in demand, like industrial, flex properties. I mentioned I do some commercial sales. I have way more buyers out there than sellers for industrial. I wish I could, find industrial to sell all day long. They are still wanting it, and I'm not to say they don't care about the rates, but it didn't slow them down. At some point, of course, everybody will care about the rates, but so far it's just industrials in so much demand. People need place mainly for warehousing. People need place to store goods.
Well, I think COVID taught us a little bit about the chain, the supply chain.
Oh yeah, when I was in business school, the whole deal was we want to do on demand, and I think COVID really stopped that. I mean, you've got to have some inventory on the shelves, or else you get what COVID gave us. I mean, I don't know, appliances for the longest time you couldn't get them, and then when they came back, they were so expensive that you really don't want to buy them then.
Executive office space seems to have some tailwinds here. We have a fair amount of it here in this building, and I've noticed with the folks that are showing interest in, now we're full, but what we had availability-wise, it was folks dropping down the class ladder, looking for hybrid flexibility. They still needed that spot to meet the client and put on a good show, but did not need it full-time for 40, 50 hours of in-person work.
Sure.
Anywhere you want to go on that?
Yeah, no, that's the trends that we definitely been seeing, and squeezing that floor plan down from whatever they had before, where there was 2,500 or 5,000 square feet, down to just in some cases they just only need a 100 square foot office, and a lot of what we see is they want the individual office and then just access to a conference room. So if they need to have a conference with 6, 7 people, or even 3 or 4, they have access to a conference room, but they don't necessarily want it in their floor plan to have to pay for it, because on a daily basis it's usually something they're not using.
So we talked a little bit off air, but there's a national trend, and there's definitively a trend here in Albemarle County to start looking at these commercial zonings, because now you have a physical structure that is whatever thousands of square feet that has been used as Class A, which is traditional office space,
Sure.
and now we're only using a third of it, a quarter of it, and there's this path forward that's been discussed about converting some of that space into residential, kind of like a quasi-work, live, work, play
Sure.
kind of thing. I know that's happening quite a bit in Richmond because I'm part of a couple of transactions there, but in your world, are you seeing any of that in your appraisals, like people diversifying the use of the structure?
Yeah, and it's interesting with commercial and residential because even though I'd say I don't appraise residential, I appraise single-family residential, but we always still have to be aware of what's going on in that world in order to, because it influences commercial, just like in residential is influenced by commercial. One of the biggest things, obviously, is the home-based office that so many more are now demanding in their residential. But yeah, going back to the commercial, I mean, it's interesting about residential because even no matter what the interest rates do, people still need housing. And for the most part, in most cases, you can still own as far as your monthly payment for less than rents are, because rents continue to go up in housing. So, there's always demand. So it doesn't, obviously we're seeing, just like you said, Keith, and we're going to continue to see that because people need housing. And if you've got a building that's 2/3, vacant, where even if it's office or something, if you're not going to get office demand, then developers going to look, where can we, get that, what can we put in there? And the other thing that we're seeing too, if the ceilings are high enough, is taking those office buildings and making them into warehouse. I've had some transactions where they're like, it's finished office, we don't care, we're ripping all the office out, we need place to store stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot of adapted reuse, a lot of conversions into other uses, and I think I would hope that we would see zoning jurisdictions that are going to go along with that because, let's face it, no city or county wants to see buildings just
sit empty.
Sit there,
Yeah.
It's also excuse me, Woody. It's also the political low-hanging fruit, right?
Right.
People don't come out and protest a conversion of a commercial site, whatever that means, versus as they would do some green space or something like that. So it's
Right.
a low-hanging. It's got water and sewer. It's got the infrastructure there typically, and it's kind of a low-hanging fruit. I'm sorry, Woody.
No, I was going to say Boston. Just their city council just basically greenlit any office zone stuff to become residential. I mean, it's a great place to be. I'm hoping we see some more of that around here. Actually, mixed use is a big thing.
How does that impact your world and your appraisal on the residential side?
Well, if it's mixed use, depending on how much of it is, I mean, it really can't be considered residential unless it's more than 50% residential. So it really becomes mixed use on the commercial side if it's more than that. And I know the cost to convert from office space to residential, it's rather expensive.
Sure.
So I mean, as long as rents stay high, I think you'll see investors interested in doing it. But it's gonna be a high price point if you're looking to purchase. Like if they go condo, where you can actually purchase the individual units, that's going to be pretty high because they've got to recapture any cost they put into it.
So help me walk through it here. This
Yep.
is a condo building. This is a condo building. We have enough share in the building where we control the association.
Okay.
If we wanted to convert from commercial to residential here, which I'm not sure I would be the guy, but maybe I exit to someone who has deeper pockets than me that can then make that conversion. How would you convert interior units that have no windows to residential? Could that even be done? You
I
can't
don't think
do that,
so.
right?
Yeah,
You can't
you're
do
going to have some fenestration on the exterior for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the number of units would just go down, right?
Yeah, that's how it would be. You would just combine it with this one that has windows and take it back.
Yeah, you need a form of egress, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna need that.
So I wonder how many commercial buildings fall in that category where some of that interior space can't be converted, which, to your point, would just limit or drop
Yeah.
the amount of what you can offer the market for a
Right.
for rent or for sale standpoint.
I mean, whether or not it's feasible here in Charlottesville is a good question. I mean, I don't know what the specific zoning requirements would be to do such a thing. And even if Keith, do you have any idea if there's an appetite on council for them to let them have it?
No, well,
I think there's an appetite on council
yeah.
in the city. The question is the cost.
So I think there's an appetite in both Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville, from elected perspective, to come up with some sort of plan that can help fix this issue, right? I mean, somebody mentioned supply and demand. Well, that's what this is all about,
Yeah.
right? Residential, commercial. I want to get into retail in a while because
Yeah.
I think that's a little soft. But look, I think anything that is some low-hanging fruit, and that's this whole conversion of commercial, I think you're going to see that happen. I think you're going to see it happen, move forward on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors side. The reality of it is, what do we have to do here? I mean, I'm looking at, I just happened to simple Google search Richmond. There's 15 pages double-sided of vacant properties
Right.
just in the city of Richmond, right? And I did a quick look at it, and some of it is industrial, some of it is commercial. There's some great opportunities in Richmond. We just helped our daughter buy over on the West End, which
Nice.
is right next to Scott's Addition, which is blowing up.
Oh, yeah.
Over
Yeah,
there.
that has been.
Well, that's what's happening. They're buying up all these old industrial that's been decades sitting there, and are now converting them. Stanley Martin Homes, one of the great sponsors of this program of what we do here, is doing that. They're buying up some old, fallen down industrial commercial parcels, and they're converting it. It's becoming this little hub over there. I just don't see that here in Charlottesville. I mean, you know the market here pretty well.
Yeah. And the one thing I was going to add into that too, that we have, especially in Richmond, but then I know you also have here is then you have the historic angle. So you've got
Oh, yeah.
a lot of those older buildings have historical protections.
It took us 18 months to paint this building and put a new facade on. Oh my God. Literally for going through the approval process.
Oh, wow.
And is this an historical
Oh
building?
yeah, this is historic.
So, okay. So
18 months.
Is there a facade easement on it?
It was, we used Formwork, Robert and Cecilia at Formwork to do this for us, so I don't know the exact details, but we had to put that new awning on, and the paint literally had to go to 3 or 4 different, would that be BAR?
In the city, it's BAR. In Albemarle County, I think it's ARB.
Yeah.
But,
City
the
BR.
color or
Color.
the paint content?
so it's the Architectural Review Board.
Right,
Yeah.
but they were concerned with the color, right?
Color and the awning.
Yeah.
Well, he's got 2 things going on. He's got
Gotcha.
that plus the historical
Well, and
overlay.
Keith, you would know better than anybody sitting at the table, but when I was at the assessor's office, I recall us losing Cracker Barrel because they didn't want a front porch in the particular part of Albemarle where
Yeah.
they wanted to build it, and that's like their whole
You
thing.
can't have
Yeah.
Cracker Barrel without a front porch.
Right.
I know. I bought a few rocking chairs.
Yeah, where you can put your
I know.
rocking chairs.
They're on my front porch. There's multiple layers to these things, and we're going through a zoning rewrite in the city of Charlottesville. Upzoning is probably the more common term of it. It's some version of it's probably going to happen. I'm confident that it will, but I constantly been saying then there's other items that you have to connect to it. If you're in an entrance corridor, right? There's that type of review. If it's a historical area, that's kind of a review. Plus this whole conversation we had about the building side of it. Is there egress and so forth and so on. But I want to get into retail, right?
Yeah.
So what our region, statewide, how's retail looking? Strong, not strong?
Retail has been, and again, you go back COVID, and the initial thought was, okay, everything, especially restaurants, are just done, And retail, the properties that were kind of already on the downward slide pre-COVID, it just kind of accelerated that. So we've seen a lot go out. We've seen a lot of big box stores, but that's not really all that surprising. That was already kind of going on before COVID because of all the online
Amazon.
presence. Amazon, yep, exactly. So what we did find overall, again, I realize that people say, well, that's not my neighborhood, but overall, retail has held better overall than originally we thought was going to happen. The big box retail, obviously, a lot of that's going towards adaptive reuse to other types of properties. But restaurant, yeah, it had a dip, but most places I've seen, restaurants are still opening. They seem to be doing decent. You still have your ones that were just going to probably go, a certain percentage for all restaurants, and Woody has the culinary background, he can tell you more, but they're always going to go under. That's just the state of the restaurant business. There's a certain percentage that are just going to go out by nature. But they have not seemed to be as high as originally we thought. any kind of retail shopping center that is grocery store anchored always tends to do good. But yeah, retail is it's hopping along. It doesn't seem to have been as bad, with the exception of the big boxes.
I've been living here since 1987. There's one thing I can never understand about the Charlottesville area: how many grocery stores we have.
We're feeling like that
We
in
have a lot.
Richmond too.
I don't get it, but anyway, the business model must work because they're still here. So Woody, from your perspective, we've been talking a little bit about the effects of COVID.
Yeah.
Has COVID just changed the real estate market forever?
Well, from my perspective, yeah. I mean, this is just me looking at it from an anecdotal point. I don't have a lot of data to support it, but I mean, our new normal is different than anything we've ever seen. And, change is inevitable. Change is really what drives our market. And, if you understand change in supply and demand, you can be a real estate agent or an appraiser, But real quick, Keith, you mentioned the upzoning. We had that meeting at Carr a couple days ago
Yeah.
with
Thank you for doing that.
with both of the zoning directors or planning directors for Charlottesville and Albemarle. James Fries and his team has done an excellent job of putting together one of the best looking zoning ordinance packages I've ever seen. I'm sure you've looked
Yeah.
at it.
Mhm.
It's very easy to read.
A lot of pictures.
A lot of pictures. It makes people with my low IQ level work well because I can look at pictures rather than read. But yeah, I found that they did an excellent job. So I just want to give them a shout.
I'm a Marine, so it's like picture me. Yeah, you guys did a great job. I tell you what, I was talking to Neil Williamson after that.
He's
and
watching right now.
That was the largest attended, because he does this every year.
Right.
Must have been your presence sitting there. And
I'm
your
sure it
awes-
wasn't.
your awesomeness. But it was a packed room.
Yeah, I mean, I attend these things pretty regularly, and I saw faces in the crowd that I just
What do you think
never
that
see.
is?
Well, I mean,
I asked Neil the same question. I wonder what your answer
I
is.
have some ideas.
I mean, we're in a market where there's inevitably going to be attrition to real estate appraisers and real estate agents. I hate to say it, no appraisers showed up to that meeting that I saw.
Sorry to hear that.
And all the agents that want to do full service agency, which is still very much a thing, have got it going on in the market. And if you're not keeping your finger on the pulse and you want to sell in the city and you're not paying attention to this stuff, I think you're going to get left in the dust.
Did
So
you find that agents were up to speed?
For the most part, I mean, there's a lot of really good agents in our market. They really keep up on it, and it's always great having conversations with those folks. But there are a few out there that where they sort of see it as an easy job, particularly the last few years. If you could list a property, you got a sale. I mean, there was not a lot of work involved with that.
Jerry and I's chemistry is probably working because I feel it's probably exactly the same as he does.
Okay.
I spoke to quite a few people after that. I heard a lot of I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Right, I didn't know.
Well, good. I'm glad they attended.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know
great.
this was happening, or I didn't understand how much zoning is an impact. We're zoning geeks here, right? And we understand for decades what the thing is, but I'll
Yeah,
let
you have
Jerry
to be
chime
in
in
this
because I bet
business.
you his opinion and
Yeah.
mine is the same.
So first, let's give some props to some of the folks watching. Vanessa Marie. Well, first, let's say this. We need to get Heather Mull on the show because she's beloved here. I'm seeing like every corner of the Commonwealth commenting
It
right
must
now.
just be my Facebook.
Vanessa Marie is giving you some props
Hi,
right now.
Vanessa.
You're getting some love on multiple Facebook pages here. Let's highlight, is it Nancy that's watching the program? Neil's got a link that I'm going to highlight here in a matter of moments. I promise I'll get to that. Neil Williamson. Oh, it's Nicole. Nicole Allen
Oh, yeah.
says Heather's the absolute best. She's also said that I've seen skylights with shafts put in for interior units. So that's a little
There you
tip
go.
right there. Thank
There
you,
you go.
Nicole. How do you think upzoning is going to impact the Charlottesville City real estate market, Heather? I'm curious of your take. And why I think that meeting was incredibly well attended is because deal flow is slowing down. Realtors have more time during the day because that deal flow is slowed down. And right now they're looking for ways to either hustle or solicit or find business.
Yeah.
And activity breeds activity.
Amen. We've been
That's
doing
what I
this-
think is happening.
We've been doing this so long, I could have recited exactly. The other thing is, everybody's now realizing our inventory is not growing. my prediction is I don't think our inventory is going to change for another 5 to 10 years.
Well, I mean, if what Powell's doing here in Jackson Hole, if he does a rate hike in Q4, which I'm thinking we're going to see a rate hike here in Q4, as Woody said before the show, I would not be surprised that we're flirting with 9%. If we're flirting with 9%, 80% of America has a 4% or under 30-year fixed mortgage.
December.
80% of homeowners here.
I'll leave the name out. December of last year, I had a conversation with a local president of a local bank. Local, I'll have to be careful because if I go any further, everybody's going to know who it is. And that person said, by the end of this year, it'll be 9.
Wow.
And I think he or she is going to be spot on. But why do you agree with me that inventory is not going to increase in the next it's going to take 5 to 10 years to
So
increase?
I just want to clarify, when you say inventory, you're talking about residential,
I'm-
commercial?
Well, definitely residential
Right.
because I'm in the residential space, but even commercial. Why is it not going to increase?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons.
Professor,
you
by
know,
the way.
Adjunct. Yeah, so there's a couple reasons. One is we still are having problem with logistics. So obviously your inventory comes from two sources. You're building or people just put more stuff on the market. Well, people are building, but of course costs are going up. Logistics, it takes longer to build. It's getting better, but it's not where it used to be. Plus there's, just the long permitting times that certain jurisdictions take. They're doing rezoning. But then as far as what's on the market, and I still, like we said, even with the rate hikes, we still have more buyers than sellers. And a lot of it is they got in at that, even on the commercial side, they got in at that 3%, 3.5%, 4% rate. Their mortgage payment, their debt service, I'll say, is here, but their rents are still way up here. And they're saying, I'm making such a good profit, every year, every month between my rents and what it's costing me. Why sell? Where else am I going to put my money?
But the big difference between commercial and residential, and I got a text yesterday from somebody wanting me to talk about 40-year mortgages. And
I think I'd already own the
I said, I don't know if I want to talk about that right now. But typically,
40-year mortgage is right there in the same basket as financing a car over 10 years.
there you
Yeah.
go.
You don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it, people.
I've danced around that topic. But the typical length of a commercial purchase loan is not 30 years.
Right, that's it.
So they are going to be
Exactly.
coming up against refis pretty darn
Right.
quickly. And what impact is that going to have?
So that was good. That's where I figured you were going. So most of the notes, we'll say on average around 5 years,
Yep.
and they have to refinance. That's if we figure we had this big boom of purchase, with low interest rates, 2020, 2021, into 2022. So now we're looking at 2025, 2026, and I think you're exactly, hit the nail on the head when you said 5 years, because that's when, now investors are going to have to make the decision, even if my property appraises for what I need, and that's another, road to go down. If I have to refinance at 8-9% instead of 3%, have the rental rate stayed where I can still make a profit,
Yeah.
and that may be
Your ROI is just a lot lower, that's all.
right. That
But you're holding on to the asset,
right,
right? Because that's going to appreciate
right.
on it. And
Yeah,
and
hopefully,
that gonna-
hopefully we've had appreciation. The cap rates raising though is gonna press that down
Sure.
some too. Of course, nobody has a crystal ball, or
Actually,
we
I
don't.
do.
You do?
Yeah, we got a couple of them right here.
Because
Do they work is the question.
we would all be because
We didn't ask that.
billionaires by now. We're hoping that rents continue to rise or at least not fall, but if anything tips that scale where they start to fall, you could really, in that 5 year, we're starting
be
on
underwater.
2025,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
2026, and then they've got to make the decision, A, do I want to sell, or B, unfortunately, maybe the bank's not going to refinance me and I have to sell, so that's when you will see
I got
inventory
to tell you, I think I think on the residential side, there is no such thing as a bubble right now. I really don't think that
Do
there
you
is.
agree with that, Heather?
I do.
Yeah, Woody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we
Just
have
because
too
everyone
much
has too much
demand.
equity.
Yeah, I mean,
that-
my wife and I right now, we were talking last week, we will never sell our house, 2 3/4. I mean,
You'll rent it.
If I decided to move into a new house, I would hold that thing right now, I'm positive $1,800 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great cash flow.
That is, the first person who put that on my radar was a UVA economics professor that watches our 1230 show religiously. And after every show, I'm getting, like, not every show, but a lot of them, a 1,000 word breakdown of what we talked about in my DMs. And he said the next phenomenon, he asked me not to name his name, been there a long time. He said the next phenomenon we're going to see is the folks like us who have a sub 4% mortgage choosing when we want to either move up or move out or slide down, up and down the ladder. We're not going to sell these houses.
This is a repeat of post-World War II.
There you go.
Where you had the veterans coming back and buying. They were capable. Everybody moved into the big city, and they would buy rental multi-units, so that a duplex, tri, or a quad, and they would literally have no mortgage payment, so they could rent out the other units, and it started them out. VA buyers are going to be able to use their entitlements for this, and I think a lot of veterans are going to be in a great position in a couple of years to do exactly what we're talking about.
I read a very interesting article, thank you for bringing that up, put by the New York Times, actually saying that same exact thing, that this is post-World War II we're in right now. But they go back to the bubble. I think commercial's the bubble. I think you just outlined when these people that are in these 2 to 3%, and now they're at 9 because you usually
commercial they didn't have anyone at 2 to 3 because it's a point or two above prime.
That's
to
exactly.
get into commercial.
Well, one of the things
Yeah,
that could
4 to 6 probably.
But they're doubling now.
Yeah, well, they're considerably higher. I mean, if he takes us to, it could be a double-digit rate that some of these folks have.
Yeah.
When they have to refinance.
Well, there's one section we hardly ever focus on the show, and that's agriculture.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, every farm operation out there operates off of credit lines, and they renew these things every couple of years. I mean, if you're an appraiser who does poultry evaluation, they are redoing those notes every couple of years. The cost of food's already really high, right? Nothing's going down after COVID for some reason, and now if their notes mature and then they've got to refi at a higher rate, or do new financing at a higher rate, food's got no choice but to just continue to go up. So that's going to put some stress on the economy too. I just don't know. We're talking bubbles. I mean, maybe that won't have a big effect to it, but
people got to eat.
Yeah.
Some of those, I was going to say, but we know that some of those, those notes are also have some government-backed grants and stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Which the other commercial and residential did not
Yeah.
have.
And we have an administration change possibly coming up at next year. So that's what we're talking about right now could be greatly affected by how the administration wants to address it.
Or the small business owners, and then jump in, the small business owners that have, for example, lines of credit to fund growth. Those lines of credit are tied to prime.
Yeah.
And all that money, that debt service is floating debt that's way more expensive right now.
So Heather, I'm a recovering developer and builder. I lost $17 million it was only money. I didn't
Keith,
lose
the first step is to admit you have a problem.
Yeah, you admit.
Yeah,
He's good at that.
I don't think, I'd like to think I'm at step 10, but probably not. But to Jerry's point, as the implosion was happening, interest rates short-term started growing up. I had multi tens of millions of dollars connected to prime. And all of a sudden my $100 and some odd $1,000 interest payment went to 200, went to 300, and you just eat up your cash real fast. I couldn't sell.
Yeah.
So we needed to do some fancy negotiating with lenders to go ahead and get out of it, which we did, thank the Lord. On it, just lost cash. I didn't lose what was important. But I tell you, that's one of the reasons I was excited about having you come here. I think some of these 5%.
She's got a lot of fans. I'm seeing
4%.
Kelly Yates here.
Hi, Kelly.
Charissa Kwan.
I think there's a wall there coming.
Carissa watches often, and she always gives me a hard time because you always mispronounce her name.
I'm sorry. It's
No.
Carissa?
It's Carissa, yeah.
Carissa. Chris, I apologize for that. Sandra Sparrow Hard, Amy Lynn watching the program right now.
Awesome.
Boatload of Richmond, Virginia is on the show. Nicole Allen, commercial is typically 3 to 5 year balloon. There will be a surge or shift in the next few years, and then she gives props to Woody. Woody's on the right thought path. I do a ton of agricultural property. It will happen with rates. Watch it happen, she says.
I was going to jump in and say I really need you to guest speak in one of my classes. When
Sure.
I go, I'm not teaching that right now this semester because it's adjunct on demand. But whenever I teach, whether it's my real estate principles or appraisal, one of the first these are like junior, senior level usually, undergraduate students. So one of the first questions I ask is, what do you want to do in real estate? You're in a real estate program.
Yep.
What do you want to do? I think I would say
Investor is 90%?
75% want to be developers.
Really?
Yes.
Get
Well,
out.
I want to be a developer, and I'm like, okay, so let me just tell you
So-
the kind
Yeah.
of stomach you need for that.
So I've done that at
By the
J-
end of the course, they reverse.
I've done that at JMU a bunch of times for some professors.
So you've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I tell my story, and then you watch everybody's eyes go. "Roop."
That's why I said by the end of the semester, they're usually, no, I don't.
But
we
look,
don't want to develop.
I'll say this. I've said this. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I got to spend time with my family, and I get to do this. I wouldn't be doing this with Jerry every 3 days a week if that didn't happen.
What
So I
is
love
the
it.
headspace of some of your juniors and seniors that are about to get into the labor market when it comes to home ownership? I found the mentality for, say, Gen Zers and younger, they're almost of the mindset that home ownership is not going to be tangible for them,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad.
It is, and I have to. It's been a couple semesters since I've had students, and I have to separate the students versus my own kids because they've grown up in real estate. And actually, my youngest daughter just started VCU in real estate. Just started last week. Joelle. In her
Couldn't talk her
freshman
out of it,
year.
huh?
No, not yet. And I remember she was talking about her and I guess her boyfriend has said something about living, them getting an apartment. She's like, why would we rent? Why wouldn't we
Yeah.
buy? I don't want to throw away. But that's because she grew up in our house. In our
She
household.
learned from you.
She hears it. My daughter, who is you mentioned VA. My daughter's Army ROTC. She just graduated. Is just waiting to go off to her specialized training. She graduated from college.
Tell her thank you for her service.
Thank you.
Killer bass player, by the way.
Yeah, she loves music, loves her bass. But she graduated from Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach, Florida. So, she immediately, she's home for a few months, so she goes off to train, but then she's looking at what she's doing next. And she's like, Mom, I need to know, how can I use my VA?
Sure.
And, we immediately started looking at that, and I was like, you get a duplex or a triplex, let them pay your rent, and, so we're already, with these kids in the household, we're already talking about that. But it is different than I hear from other people, other students their age just don't seem to be interested. Of course, other kids our age also aren't even interested in getting a driver's license, which is so foreign
it's
to me.
so weird.
Have you seen
Different.
that?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in New York
sprinted
City,
to
so
the
I,
DMV.
you hopped on a bus
Yeah,
and went
the
to
day
Subway.
Yeah, I can
everywhere.
see it in
Yeah,
a
mine.
city, but like in a rural area like
Yeah.
we have here, I'm like, well, I guess they just think we're going to chauffeur them. We're their personal Uber drivers forever. I'm
So,
like, no.
so Woody, staying on this 5 to 10 year before I think the ship is going to get righted on inventory. A, do you think the same way? And B, what do you see out there in your little tool belt there that we can help fix this a little bit from your perspective?
Well, the market's going to do what the market does. I don't know that we can fix it.
Great answer.
I think the only adjustment we're going to see is if we have a major economic event nationally, which is possible. And I don't want to talk politics at all, but with the way the country's going right now, we might see something.
And there's an election on the horizon.
Yeah, it's getting crazier every day out there.
Yeah.
So if we have a major shift at the national level, that could really impact things. Charlottesville's been very insulated to a lot of that because we've got the university and the hospital systems here, NGIC and all of that. So as long as those sectors continue to grow, which I don't see anything that's going to shift that, because NGIC's DoD funding and that's also PsyOps too. So they get funding from that part of the government too. But the university is continuing to grow. They're projecting to grow a bunch over the next 20 years. So I just don't see it. And with it being the flagship public school for the Commonwealth, it doesn't shrink. Has their attendance ever shrank?
No, I think we're going to have 6,000 to 10,000 incremental residents to the Charlottesville-Albemarle area in the next 5 to 10 years minimum. And these will be with six-figured salaries with the birth of the Data Science School,
Yep.
the Biotech Institute, and UVA's commitment to expanding enrollment. Plus, I don't think we really understand the impact of Albemarle County dropping $58 million of taxpayer dollars to acquire 462 acres in northern Albemarle to build that defense campus for the
Right.
defense sector. I think we'll see a lot of businesses birth from that ecosystem.
And I'm going to add reality to that. I'm the chairman of the Piedmont Community Land Trust. We're looking for an executive director. It's a six-figure job.
There you go.
I don't think they can pay Heather enough for that. Yeah.
No.
I know, you know how much I'm traveling.
Yeah,
to
she has no
conferences,
time for
like
that anyway.
12 flights a year. I don't know how I would.
I look at all the stuff she volunteers for, and I get weary looking at it. I mean, she's all over the place all the time.
That's great. Keeps you busy.
But our applicant pool is like in very low.
Really? No kidding.
And the number one reason is the cost of living here.
Well, I want to throw this. What do you think the average median household income according to HUD is for this area? This may shock you. Median household income, HUD-backed statistic for
It's
this
higher
area.
than Miami's.
Really? I don't know Miami's. but
Well, with that
six
cocaine
figures,
market down
over.
there, you figure it'd be more.
It's kind of gone off a little bit. Cocaine business a little bit.
123,300
For me, wow.
So
for
those that.
Central Virginia.
Yeah.
So I was on a Zoom call with people from all over the country because I'm doing a little bit of speaking.
Isn't
in
that
September.
bananas?
That's high, yes.
Miami's in the 80s.
Wow.
And that's, as Jerry outlined, it's the high paying.
Where was Nova at?
Excuse me?
Where was Nova? Did they mention?
Northern Virginia.
Yeah, I could, if somebody wants to do that, I can find out. If somebody wants to
I
check.
was just curious,
I
just
could,
curious.
I
I mean,
could.
I would imagine Northern Virginia is higher than the 123.3.
Yeah, I
but
think it was like 190 something.
it's extremely high for Central Virginia, but it just shows you the impact that the University of Virginia has here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious of your thoughts on because it's a great topic for a talk show, on how upzoning, where loosening zoning restrictions and encouraging either granny flats or ADUs in the backyard or density with apartments in certain districts, how that may or may not impact pricing and values once it's truly implemented.
Yeah, just kind of like we talked earlier, anytime you put in more supply, into the market, I mean, it's obviously, going to help with that demand that's needed. And I think it's probably coming because we just are running out of resources for inventory. So, it's so hard to say. You would think that it would help regulate the prices the more that you're putting into the. It's such a low question because you would think that it's going to make the prices a little more reasonable. But then, just like you said, with the population that's incoming, it becomes, can we do that fast enough? And it's a balance because you also don't want to adversely impact. But there's a reason we have zoning. But zoning can be, a
Oh,
love-hate
don't get me
thing.
started on zoning.
I know. I spent a lot of time reading zoning codes. So it's like you don't want to tip it where you're doing something adversely affecting us.
Values.
Certain values
Yeah.
in certain neighborhoods
Right.
and what.
That's
But you also, you need to put more inventory.
You got a
in.
lot of folks positioning land for sale at premium prices, and in the copy of the listing, they're saying, once zoning is approved, you can do this, so we're going to list this land for considerably more than its value today.
I've had two speculative investors buy property recently that we were doing the appraisal work for, and that's exactly what they're doing.
I'm also hearing for the first time people wanting to move out of the city because of that. I've got two clients.
I think they're going to be
we're gonna live-
sprinting to HOA neighborhoods in Albemarle County to maintain quality of life for fear of density and what that could do for congestion, parking, vehicles in the road, in front of their houses,
That's going to just drive pricing up even more in those HOAs.
100%.
And the way that the zoning that they're doing it, I think, is they're trying to get the private market to be a solution, which I always applaud private market solutions, but it's going to trickle in inventory. And I think all it's going to do is give steroids to pricing going up.
I 1,000% agree with you.
So Arlington, Washington, Alexandria, DC, VA, Maryland, HUD Metro, median family income, 152,100.
It's not that far apart.
Not
Not
that
that
far
far
at all.
apart.
Yeah. So
Not
is
that far.
Charlottesville, Central Virginia, number 2 in the Commonwealth?
As far as cost of living goes, it's always been the case.
Yeah.
Charlottesville area has always been number 2 to that.
Northern Virginia.
Yeah. Let's see what Richmond is, since you were our.
I'd say Richmond's below 100. If I put the over-under at
I
100.
believe it is. I
Yeah.
also looked.
How is the Richmond market doing that you're seeing, Heather?
It is, sorry, continuing, it is.
You throwing stuff at Woody?
I am, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, it's continuing to, move along. Again, Richmond market, it's so loaded because you've got different sectors of commercial, and then of course the residential. We have a second house. We have it on the market. We just put on the market just because we're looking to do some other stuff, and we're in the western part, we're in Chesterfield County, still seeing multiple offers, still seeing, not in every case, it's definitely slowed down, I'm not saying that, but, stuff selling at 100% of price or above. When I mentioned I sold some warehouse this year, and both of them had multiple offers, and I'm over here going, I do commercial, we don't deal with multiple offers.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
calling
not a
broker
common-
going, how do I, this is different, this is a new world
Yeah,
for me.
sure.
So that's still, what's interesting about Richmond, and you started to hint on it, is going out of the city. And I was going to say, what I'm seeing a lot more locally and in the appraisal business is a lot of interest in a little bit more rural areas. One, because people are, and this is on commercial and residential, people are able to work from home. So post-COVID, they're like, why do I want to, sit in my small house paying double what I could get, twice as much house and some land for out in the county. And it's just especially in commercial, when you get in rural areas, the prices have been so low for so long.
You're shooting up.
They are. You have a lot of especially with for example, multifamily, mom and pop have been managing it for years. Yep. They're just like, oh, I like the tenants, and I don't want to raise their rents. Well, then an investor, but they're ready to retire now. An investor comes in, they're like,
I'll buy
oh
it.
my gosh, I could raise these rents, $500 a month and still be below market.
Yeah.
And we're seeing rural is really getting a lot of interest.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that here in a minute, because my wife and I and our daughter just helped them buy a house in Richmond. We're dabbling in opening up a branch in Richmond. 109,400, the city of Richmond.
That's the HUD.
That's the HUD. It's over 100 grand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you a couple years ago that number was substantially lower than that. They bought between Patterson and Monument
I know
and
exactly what you mean.
right
Yes.
and where everybody else wants,
Whew.
and Willow
Yeah.
Lawn and
That's-
Carytown.
yeah.
We lost 13 deals. We won the deal, had 20 other offers on it for substantially above list, and we were lucky enough
Yep.
to make it
Well,
happen.
and that's why
close.
we're starting to see some push into the suburban and rural areas, because they can't get those
in six
deals.
6 months it went up so much.
Wow.
That they could not buy in the neighborhood they are in right
Neil,
Yeah.
I'll get to your question here. Neil Williamson, I'll let you guys percolate this question here. Think about it. How will upzoning impact Charlottesville's demographics? I think upzoning is going to make the demographics more homogenous and more wealthy, but we're going to ask the panel that question. I want to highlight some of the viewers and listeners that are watching, like Teresa Morris, who's giving the heart emoji to Heather right now, giving her a lot of props.
I know Teresa.
Joe Meyer, who I believe is an appraiser, is
Baton Rouge,
watching.
Louisiana.
And in Louisiana?
Yeah.
He says income is the driving factor of the housing market right now. It's just not keeping up with market value. So we have a Louisiana appraiser offering his perspective. Thank you for joining us on the show. How about Neil's question? How will upzoning, Woody, why don't we throw this to you first? How will upzoning impact Charlottesville's demographics?
What's the right way to say this? We're going to be
Greenwich, Connecticut?
We're going to be more Caucasian and more wealthy.
Yeah,
I
homogeneous and
don't
wealthy.
see it going any other direction. This is an affluent community, and as long as we've got policy in place that makes it so expensive to build, because we have to talk about the cost of permitting and getting things through approval. It's tremendously expensive. So until we can get a tap on that, or land value starts to go back down, I don't see it going any other direction, because you've got to have folks that can afford to live here, and that's executive level pay, and we're not doing a whole lot for our service industry whatsoever. We're going to be like Breckenridge and Aspen, where and Jackson Hole. Speaking of the Fed today, a bunch of appraisers and we usually go out we'll fly into Jackson Hole or Denver, and we go snowmobiling every year for a few days with a guide. And we talk to the guides and the people that are there helping all of us tourists do stuff. None of them live in Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming from an hour and a half away because it's the best economy for them to work in, but they can't afford to live there because that's the billionaire's playground. So.
Yeah. Kind of like my daughter wants to move to
Montana.
Montana to
Yeah.
was it
To Bozeman? Is she a Yellowstone fan?
Yeah, of course.
Gotta be.
Loves Yellowstone?
And then she started looking at prices.
Yeah.
It's those cowboy hats and the jeans that she likes over there. Is that what it is?
It must be.
It must be.
So you're a rock star, Woody, and I think I know the answer to this, but, we're having this conversation about lack of inventory, so forth and so on. People are still buying and selling. I'm looking at the live, what's happening. Your business is increasing, decreasing, are you seeing it slowing down from your world? Because if you slow down a little bit, then that's kind of a little bit of an indicator of where we're going.
Well, obviously, there's less purchase transactions going on because of inventory. So our mortgage side is going down, which is actually a boom to my business model because we're wanting to get it a little further away from mortgage lending because it's such a commoditized servicing part.
Sure.
Most lenders don't care about the appraiser; they just care about numbers, and that's all we are to most of them. But Heather and I have been working on a lot of private work together where we've had mixed, litigation things that came up, trust things that have come up, and even private. So my private side business, which would include litigation and all that, is all up. I was just in court, speaking of Jesse Rutherford, me and Jesse were testifying in a case last week in Nelson County for the afternoon, which is, I love doing, but we've seen an
You get
increase
paid
on
your
that
full
side.
rate for that, right?
We do hourly rate for that,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor, and but yeah, we are slower than we were last year by about 30%.
Yeah.
But I actually
yeah.
welcome the change because we were overwhelmed. For 4 years there, myself and my son, we were working, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. It was very tiring.
Yeah.
Our volume is about down 30%. We projected that, but the average sales prices is up
Yeah.
substantially, which again, a person who works off a commission, that kind of balances itself out a little.
Right.
So
a
you're
little-
working less and making the same amount of money
No,
basically
I'm
what you're
actually
saying.
working more, right? Because
with less volume?
it's no,
It's harder.
because it's harder,
Yeah.
right?
Closing the deal?
Well, no, it's harder to close the deal. The world of an easy closing probably went away a long time ago, right? But now we are spending more time with buyers and sellers and helping them navigate the process, right? Particularly on the buyer side, right? It's just a lot of time. And we've been in it forever. We're used to having clients that we help for years before they either buy or sell. But that's kind of where we're going back to. The 2020, 2021, I got a buyer, or I got a seller, and things are
Right.
moving rapidly. We're back to where skills matter, professionalism
Yeah.
matters, who matters on that end of it. So I'm loving that part of it, but you've got to work harder at it. But our personal income is not, it took a bit of a hit, but not a huge hit at the moment.
Well,
I'm kind of like you are, where I'm, down about 30%, but it was welcome. I've gone, wow, I can actually get 6 hours sleep now. It was just so, and my husband, who came from the restaurant side and post-COVID after corporate closed his restaurant, he was managing, came over, and he's doing appraisals with me now too. And I told him, though he came over in 2020, 2021, I'm like, this is not normal. Just so you know, what we're doing
Yeah.
right now is not normal.
Yeah.
So we're both happy we can finally breathe again. It's just
Yeah.
a little bit more normalized, steady.
But in the commercial world and the residential world, because let's face it, the residential world we're at 3%. The commercial world was at 4 or 5 or 6%.
Yeah, depending on the property.
It's
but yeah.
historically low, right?
historically.
Historically low, numbers you've never seen,
Right.
never seen before. That is going to have such a long-term impact, I think, on
Yeah.
our business that I don't think everybody at this table really knows, but I just know it's not going to be good.
That's one of the things I've said since talking, and where it's in interviews like this or talks like this. The one thing that is certain is this is all uncertain. It's stuff we've never seen before, and we obviously, as analysts, we are trying to predict the future. That's where we need that crystal ball. But it's so hard to predict when there's so many different angles. And one thing I just actually saw him talking on the TV, sitting here. Do you follow Dr. Yoon?
I do.
Okay.
I'm actually
This is great.
He's coming to doing our economic forum.
He is coming.
And
He is
the
coming.
day
National
before-
Association of Realtors chief economist, for those that don't know, Dr. Hune.
So I bet I always follow him anyway, but I'm also chair for NAR. I'm chair of their Commercial Economic Forum next year, and Dr. Yoon, speaks to us as part of that. Listening to him, and I'm telling you, when he speaks, people listen, especially with NAR, the realtors listen. He kind of takes a different perspective. He's predicting rates lowering. Whether it's commercial and residential.
I'm speaking at the Reese Media event here in DC with him.
Oh, nice.
I'm on the same panel on the 6th of September.
Okay, good.
Last year, he was saying, and Lawrence is a great guy.
Yep.
He was saying interest rates would not go over this amount
I
of money.
know.
4%.
I remember hearing him
And he's he's admitted he made a mistake. There were certain things that go in there. Everybody's going to listen to him closely.
I mean, the lead headline on CNBC right now that Jackson Hole and Powell's done, this is literally the headline on CNBC. Fed Chair Powell calls inflation too high and warns that we are prepared for more rate hikes.
Yeah.
What's interesting is Dr. Yoon doesn't really give his opinion as far as I think the government's doing this wrong or something like that.
Yeah.
The first time though, earlier this year, we were in DC at NAR in May. He actually said they are making a mistake by continuing to rise, and we were all like, "Wow!"
He's starting to be a little bit more aggressive.
I've noticed
about that.
But the thing is, whether he's right or wrong, the realtors in the room
Listen
listen and
Right.
react based on what he's saying, whether it's right or wrong.
Oh, he has a
So-
big microphone, and as far as economics go with property. But I mean, he's also working for the largest sales trade organization in the world. He has to be a little rose-colored glass to do what he does for a living, and I respect him. I think he's one of the best economists out there.
Super smart.
But he's also he's limited to the data that's in front of him, and no one's certain about where this market is going.
Well, and that's why I said that even listening to, what he's predicted, and the only certain thing is it's uncertain.
Absolutely.
We're trying the best we can to make these predictions, but
Do you
this is
listen
just
to
different.
Dr. Lisa Steravent at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually chaired the VAR
Yeah,
Economic Committee last year, and Dr. Sturdivant, before she went to, I think she's with
Bright
Bright
now. She's with Bright now.
She was over there. She was kind of like my right-hand.
Yeah,
Person.
she's very direct.
Yes, she is.
She's very direct, and will tell you what's on.
Well, she
on-
studies
on-
the dismal science. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you have to be.
So just a little positive news, right?
Yeah.
This last week, so I keep a track 7 days going back in our footprint. This is residential now, and our footprint. This Friday last week, there was 46 new homes that came on the market. So this is a 6 jurisdiction area from where we're sitting: Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, Nelson, Greene, and Louisa County. We're up to 68 now.
So more inventory.
So we just picked up a substantial, you guys are smart, you can figure out what the percentage is on that real quick. But we picked up from 46 to 68. Now, the pendings are flat. Last week we had 55, we now have 52, so it's a little bit low. What is sold and closed last week was 75, we're now down to 60. So inventory is starting to tick up just a little bit.
That could be seasonal, though.
I was going to say, so it's
I
always
was
been
just about
known.
to ask
Yeah,
what you think that was about.
These 2 weeks, last week and this week, which is when we listed our other house too, are known, other than the time between, Christmas and New Year's, as the 2 slowest weeks for real estate of the year.
Yeah, everybody's kids are going back to school.
They're not, yeah.
You know,
That's what
and
the
even if you
pandemic-
don't have children, I mean, all the cheese boxes driving the kids around in the county. I mean, I try not to schedule
curious to
around
see what
when,
those stats
when
say in
school
7 days,
lets
if it
out,
was
because
just-
it really
Well,
slows
let's
me down
take
getting
a
around.
picture of it. Let's see what it looked like 2 months ago.
What are you taking a picture of over there? Inventory?
Yeah, well, I've already done it. I'm just going to go back to, so back in July 30th, that number was 40, not 60, not 68. Let's see.
Albemarle
Okay.
County, year over year, Q2 last year versus Q2 this year, values jumped 11%, Heather.
Wow.
Do we
And that's
anticipate?
despite rate hikes.
Yeah, right, undoubtedly. Do we anticipate a double-digit appreciation year over year this time next year? What's your crystal ball?
I'm commercial, so that is more of a residential.
What do you think
I'm gonna
about
kick
that,
that
Woody?
over to Woody.
I don't.
He would have a better feel.
I think we're going to
Good
see
save,
a
by the
little
way.
taming of pricing,
I
just
don't think it
because,
will be, but I want
like
to
I was
see what
looking
he
at 2 bedrooms in Albemarle County this morning for some market analysis I'm doing for an assignment, and there's actually pretty decent amount of inventory on. I mean, for what we were used to for the last couple of years. I mean, there's 5 2 bedrooms between 300,000 and 500,000, low acreage, and also their median days on market for those 5 properties are 25. So things are starting to lengthen out a little bit. Now, 2 bedrooms are a very niche product in the residential sector because when you get to 1 and 2 bedrooms, they really kind of suffer a little bit because there's not as much utility. A family really can't move into it. If you've got a couple of kids, you need 4 or 5 bedrooms. So they sort of perform a little differently than the rest of the market. But I was surprised that 25 was the median.
I want to pick your brain on DOMs here in a minute, but everybody would agree like mid-May is the other surge
Yeah.
in the market.
Yeah,
So
I'd
I'm
say
looking
so.
at May 15th, 5 days back, it was 68. So to your point,
Right.
we're kind of cycling back up, and I think we're now back to more seasonal as far as residential goes. Commercial, I think that's always on a need basis.
Well, we're back to normal. The fervor's gone.
And some of you just said that's early, that 1 bedroom. That's been a trend since COVID. Is even if you were traditional 1 bedroom, now a lot of people are wanting the home-based office. So they're also going into the 2 bedrooms because they need that extra bedroom
Yeah.
for an office. So it's even hurting that one even more.
Yeah, for sure.
So Woody and I are working on doing a show like the first Monday after the end of the month to talk about stats, right? Because he's a genius at it and he's helping me
Love
out.
stats.
But we're looking at DOM. We're looking at Woody's able to help us out number of listings. So actually, you can't pull that from cars. So we're going to start providing that information for real estate agents that are watching, and we're going to store it on the website that we have here. But look. DOMs, I've been tracking DOMs for decades. It used to be 90 days was
I
like,
remember.
right? 90 days used
Yeah.
to be the day. Do we have a new norm? Is there a new number? Is it less than 90 days now where we got a balanced market? Are we now looking at 30, 45, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we have to look at the market as it exists right now, and yeah, I mean, it's less than 30 right now. I mean, that's our normal. And if you're in the city or right around the city, it's probably less than 15 still. So, I mean, the market's still trucking along really strongly in that manner. But, like I was mentioning, that 2 bedroom, that's out in the county. And the county is usually where you're going to start seeing things, especially once you get out to ESMA and the really rural parts of the county. There's no good internet. There's no great cell service out there. People, that's really where I think we're going to start seeing the market. If it's going to shift, it'll be there first.
Well, you make a good point with that. That is the one drawback to what I said earlier about the rural is the lack of really good
Yeah.
internet. That's like top of people's.
Oh yeah, if you work from
Demand.
home at all, you've got to have it. And if you want to watch television anymore,
Yeah.
because everybody's streaming now.
Yeah.
Andre Xavier has this question. He's a small business owner many times over. He goes, does the panel think that if the second interest rate drops, there will be a wave of buyers and sellers coming into our market and we go back to a crazy competitive market?
It'd have to drop a lot.
That was my first thought too. It would have to drop. a lot.
Assuming we're pushing 9, right? It will have
I mean, after this, we're going to be flirting undoubtedly with 8. And then if he bumps 25 bips in the fourth quarter, you're going to be over 8, probably flirting with 9, obviously dependent on credit score and how
Sure.
qualified the candidate is for a mortgage.
I think the magic number would have to go back to is sub 5. And,
No doubt.
And the reason I say that is because
Perception.
people like myself and you, we've got a lot of equity in our property.
Mm-hmm.
So the equity position I've got in my property can sort of offset what that rate is, even if it's a couple points higher than what I'm currently paying. So I'm not voluntarily wanting to move right now because I mean, honestly, my monthly payment, even with the equity, if I could cash it on my house and put it down, is still too high. I mean, the time value of money for the current rates is just not good for someone in my position.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it would have to. Now, would I be willing to do it at 4.5? Yeah, probably. Because if my wife really wanted to move somewhere, I'm going to make her happy and we're going to move. But
And
yeah.
you're going to do it with a bag with hundreds of thousands of dollars in it
Yeah,
to help offset the fact that you 2x your rate.
yeah.
I was reading an article this morning, I believe it was Inman, that they said of the federally backed loans, almost 90% have a sub-5 mortgage rate.
Wow.
Well, no, the stat is 80% of American homeowners have a rate sub 4%.
And I think they...
And those aren't even federally backed loans.
Correct. They were just looking at this was just looking at federally backed loans, but you're 100% right. I think the closer we get to 9, it's got to drop way down. I think people that'll buy at 8 or 9 and you get to 5 or 6, which, oh, by the way, since 1972, the average is 7.1%. That's the average for a 30-year mortgage since 1972. But generally, the rule of thumb, it's got to drop about 2 points.
Yeah.
Right? In order to refi. Is that the same in the commercial world?
Yes and no. I mean, it's so dependent on a lot of other factors, such as the income, the rents, and,
Sure.
you know, some refi for just really other reasons. They need, you know, they want to
Cash.
expand, they want to take cash out. They need a tenant that needs built, that, hey, we can get this no large tenant in, but we need to finance stuff because we've got to do build out for them. So there's a lot of other factors, you know.
Well, I mean, if we drop 2 points now, we'd be around 6%. I still think the analogy in my mind is that that buyers, like consumers like myself, we're a hibernating bear in the back of a cave. You got to go in there and poke the bear and wake him up. And 6% is not going to wake me up to leave a sub 3% rate.
6% wouldn't even get me to do anything.
Unless you have to.
Unless you
I mean,
have
there's life happens.
And let's face it, most buyers, if you look at NAR's stats, most buyers in the high percentages, close to 80%, move because they have to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then that's what
Retirement, family.
you're always going to have that, where they're moving because they need larger house,
Death,
they need
divorces,
smaller
jobs.
house.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's always going to be, even with those low interest rates, people that are selling just because they have to or they want to, or
I've mentioned this to Jerry a couple times on the show. We have 2 or 3 seller clients that are frightened because they're at this 2 to 3% and they have to move.
Yeah.
Right? Even though they're going to end up with a chunk of money.
Right.
Right? But they have to move. They're paying more. And they're now going to be at 8 or 9% because they haven't made that decision
And will
yet.
they be
to
at a
move.
lateral move, though? Will they have to
I think
downsize?
No, they're going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to go down in size.
That's-
They're going to
thinking
go
about
down.
ourselves.
That's anti-American consumer thought. I mean, we never as consumers in America go, oh, I want to get smaller, unless we're downsizing for age reasons or something like that. But it's always bigger, better. And that's counterintuitive to most consumers.
We're thinking we're just going to get smaller so the kids can't move back in after college.
Oh,
I'm
give me a high five.
We're going to go to a 1-bedroom house and none of y'all can move back in.
Next to a brewery.
Exactly.
Right?
That's great. I love the show, guys. We've gone to 11:30 here. We would love some closing thoughts from everybody. Heather, it's been a joy having you on set. You're a pro's pro. How about some closing thoughts for the viewers and listeners?
Closing thoughts. God, this is, like I said, the biggest certain is it's uncertain, but it's commercial still going to plug along. People still need places to work, to rent, to, historically there's a phrase that commercial is a good insulation against inflation. You can pay if commercial goes up in prices. As long as your rents are going up and you're still, your ROI, depending on where your ROI is, it's still a great investment.
I like it. Woody Fincham.
I think going back to what Keith was talking about earlier, my closing thought would be, I think it's super important for consumers to seek out very qualified veteran professionals that are working in the real estate space. This is a market that is very competitive, and you got to have a good negotiator. And on the appraisal side, hopefully the lenders are looking for appraisers who actually know how to do market analysis. Because that is super, super important right now. I think the limited servicing agencies are going to see some problems because, really, it's not beneficial to the market overall. So I think consumers are going to really see, because we talk about the value proposition of being a realtor, because I'm on the board at CAR, and of course I'm not speaking for the board whatsoever, but we're trying to help agents figure out how to define what that value is, and I think that's really where we're going to start seeing more value in full service agency.
I had an interesting conversation yesterday with some folks at the event that we were at, and it was good to hear that CAR is trying to move into that direction. I think that's the right thing. Look, 68 homes came on the market this week. 53 are in pending, so homes are coming on, homes are going under contract. Even at this elevated 30-year mortgage rate. To Woody's point, hire a trusted advisor. We've got a bunch of them at this table. Pull down partner tab at Real Talk with Keith Smith. That's where the trusted advisors are. But folks are buying and selling. I'm glad you said the thing about negotiation, because one of the people ask us all the time, what is one of the best values that realtors, I think I even said that right.
I think you did.
Bring
Good job.
They bust my chops because I can't say realtor right. I swallow the R because I'm from New York. Is our negotiating skills. And that starts with negotiating with the buyer and the seller to help them navigate through the process. Maybe navigation's a better choice of words. But thank you for coming, Heather. You're
Thank
a
you for
rock
having
star. I've
me.
been wanting to have this commercial conversation
I
and geek
appreciate
out a
it.
little bit. So thank
Yeah.
you. And if I can help in any way, reach out.
I appreciate
Woody,
it.
thank you as always, man.
Yeah, you guys were fantastic. Heather,
Thank you.
Keith, Woody, Judith, thank you to you as well. The show is presented today by Yes Realty Partners. Find the show archived at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. The show airs Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10:15 right here. The I Love Seville show is up in 1 hour at 12:30, guys. Thank you kindly for joining us. We'll touch base with you in approximately 59 minutes and change. Take care. Good work.
Thanks, guys.
everyone. You were awesome.
Thank you. Be awesome.